Imagine a tech genius for a second, right? This is a guy who designed and patented a key component for Wi-Fi routers in his 20s. He started and sold multiple companies. By all conventional metrics, he was wildly successful. But he also had a relationship with his finances that can only be described as a mix of deep insecurity and, honestly, childish stupidity. One day, he hands a buddy several $1,000s in cash, tells him to go to the jewelry store down the street and buy a few $1,000 gold coins. An hour later, gold coins in hand, this tech exec and his friends gather on a dock overlooking the Pacific Ocean, and they proceed to throw the coins into the sea, literally skipping them like rocks, cackling as they argue whose went the furthest, just for fun. Now, contrast him with Ronald Read. Read was born in rural Vermont. He fixed cars at a gas station for 25 years, swept floors at JCPenney for 17 years, and bought a 2-bedroom house for 12 grand. His main hobby? Chopping firewood.
Doing the math, academic finance tells you the tech genius should win the game of wealth every single time. Obviously, right? He had the income, the high-level cognitive processing, the network, but understanding human nature explains what actually happened. That executive who skipped gold coins into the ocean, he eventually went completely broke. The janitor who chopped firewood, well, he conquered Wall Street.
When Ronald Read died in 2014 at the age of 92, he left behind a net worth of over $8 million. He left $2 million to his stepkids and $6 million to his local hospital and library. There was no lottery win here, no secret inheritance, just tiny, persistent savings compounded over decades. You see, you probably think money is a spreadsheet game. You think it's about finding the mathematically optimal formula. It's not. It's a dopamine game. It's a psychological operating system. And today, we're fixing exactly how you play it.
Okay, let's dive into this. The real reason Ronald Read succeeded where a tech genius completely failed comes down to a fundamental conflict. It's what we call the spreadsheet versus the dinner table.
Here's the thing. Academic finance expects you to act like a cold, calculating machine. It assumes that if a formula tells you what to do, you'll just go do it. It treats money like physics, governed by these strict, immutable laws. But the reality? Almost no one makes important financial decisions while staring at a spreadsheet. They make them at the dinner table, they make them in a conference room, they make them while worrying about disappointing a spouse or looking foolish in front of a brother-in-law or fighting their own internal doubts. What makes perfect, logical sense in a spreadsheet often catastrophically fails in the real world. Why? Because the spreadsheet doesn't account for fear, envy, and ego.
And this brings us to a massive misconception about what wealth actually is. Wealth isn't the Ferrari. It isn't the gold coin skipped into the ocean. Wealth is the accumulated leftovers after you spend what you take in. It's exactly what you do not see. It's the options you haven't exercised, the purchases you haven't made. Now, most people lose their money right here because they try to be mathematically rational to get the things they want. But I'll show you why aiming to be merely reasonable instead is the absolute ultimate cheat code in just a minute. First, we've got to uncover the behavioral science of why really smart people go broke. There is a massive, hidden gap between getting wealthy and staying wealthy. They are two completely different skill sets. Getting money requires optimism, taking risks, and really putting yourself out there. Staying money requires the exact opposite. It requires a healthy dose of paranoia, frugality, and an absolute obsession with survival. Look at this compounding curve. Think of compounding like an ice age. An ice age isn't caused by a massive, sudden freeze. It's actually caused by a slightly cooler summer that fails to melt the winter snow. Then, the next winter adds a little more snow, which reflects more sunlight, which cools the earth a tiny bit more, leaving even more snow the following year. It is a small, persistent change over a massive amount of time. But here's the catch with compounding. It only works if you survive long enough to let the magic happen. You literally cannot interrupt it.
And this brilliantly illustrates the high-stakes wealth trap that wiped out legendary traders like Jesse Livermore. Livermore was one of the greatest stock market traders of his day. By 1929, he was worth the equivalent of $3 billion. He was an absolute master at getting wealthy. But he thought his success made him invincible. He lacked the paranoia required to stay wealthy. He kept taking massive levered risks, assuming the good times would never end. By 1940, he had lost everything and tragically took his own life. He fell into the trap of thinking that because he was smart enough to make it, he must be rational enough to keep it.
But this isn't just about multi-billionaire traders. This psychological gap between the spreadsheet's promise and the dinner table's reality is exactly why you might be feeling anxious about your savings right now. We live in a world that constantly confuses the appearance of money with actual wealth. You see someone driving a $100,000 car, you think, wow, they are wealthy. In reality, the only real data point you have is that they have $100,000 less than they did before they bought the car, or they have $100,000 more in debt. When you define savings as the gap between your ego and your income, you quickly realize why keeping up with the Joneses is a mathematically unwinnable game.
Remember when I told you earlier that aiming to be merely reasonable is the cheat code? Well, I'm about to reveal the exact mental shifts you need to escape this wealth trap and stop letting your spreadsheet ruin your life.
The academic finance world demands that you be a cold, calculating machine. It tells you to optimize every single penny, to never pay off a low-interest mortgage, to invest every spare dime into the highest-yielding asset. But you are not a spreadsheet. You're a human being, a flawed, emotional, highly complex person. And the secret is this: a technically imperfect strategy that you actually love and that you can stick with during terrifying market crashes will always beat a mathematically perfect strategy that you abandon in a panic the moment things get scary.
So the crucial point is how we install what we'll call the reasonable override. We have to shift your entire goal from being ROI optimized to being sleep at night optimized. How do we do that? First, define your game. A day trader, an index fund investor, and a retiree are all playing completely different games. If you're a long-term investor, taking cues from a day trader on TV is like a marathon runner adjusting their pace because they saw a sprinter running fast. Know your game and ignore the rest. Second, stop moving the goalposts. The absolute hardest financial skill is getting the goalpost to stop moving. If your expectations rise equally with your income, you will never actually build wealth. You'll just build a more expensive treadmill. Third, optimize for sleeping at night.
To show you just how powerful this is, consider this ultimate financial confession from the creator of these concepts. He paid off his house mortgage when interest rates were absurdly low. Now, any rational, spreadsheet-wielding financial advisor would scream that this is a terrible idea. The mathematically correct move is to keep the cheap debt and invest your cash in the stock market to capture the spread. On paper, paying off that house was totally indefensible. But psychologically, it was the absolute best decision he ever made. It gave him an unbelievable sense of independence, it eliminated a massive monthly stressor, it optimized for his family sleeping perfectly at night. It wasn't coldly rational, no, but it was incredibly reasonable.
Which brings us all the way back to our humble janitor, Ronald Reed. Earlier, you might have thought his $8 million was just a wild anomaly, a stroke of blind luck. But now, you see the truth. Reed didn't win because he had better math. He won because he had supreme psychological endurance. He defined his game. He didn't let ego inflate his lifestyle. He was profoundly reasonable, not a cold calculator. He simply survived long enough for the ice age of compounding to do its incredible work.
The next time you sit down to make a financial decision, do me a favor. Close the spreadsheet for just a second. Ask yourself, is this mathematically optimal, or does this actually help me sleep at night? Because the ultimate currency isn't dollars. It's control over your time and peace of mind. So take a hard look at your own portfolio. Are you optimizing for a spreadsheet, or are you optimizing for your life? Stay reasonable. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next Explainer.